Good evening, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun, and welcome to my channel. If you have been subscribing, if you haven't been subscribing, if you have been supporting, if you haven't been supporting, thank you for watching this video, and thank you for accessing my YouTube channel. We are 2 months old. In practice, we created this channel in 2012. That is about 10 years ago. But from that time going forward, we were not doing anything. I was inactive. The problem with inactivity in doing anything is that you don't do anything at all. So when we began in December last year, we became 2 months old. And I have been talking on this channel discussing the cost of living. There's a crisis. And like I said previously, speaking here, I have said at the outset that the cost of living is actually a crisis, but the cost of living can also be a way of life. Something costs you something. You live your life, you're born, you live like as a baby, you grow into adult, and it is cost. Something always is costing something. And as a society, we created capitalism. And capitalism is a system of rule. Like I said before, in the other videos, if you haven't actually watched the other videos, please watch the other videos and find out what I've been talking about. I've been talking about many things. Whatever I spoke about in the past, whatever I speak about in the present, whatever I am going to speak about going forward in the future is going to be related to the cost of living. The cost of living is going to be here. It's a crisis for a long time. What exacerbated the cost of living was the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is still carrying on now. It's a crisis. It's a global crisis. In the process of attending to this program, I've actually illustrated in various ways, speaking about the cost of living in terms of the welfare state, in terms of militarism, in terms of not in that order, but start I think with the welfare state. And my initial intention attending to this was actually to try and share with the people of the UK where practical help from the government is available. And now I gave a preview, a brief undertaking on those objectives. And if you watch my earlier video, you will find bits and pieces in relation to information with the government, information with the local authorities, information with the non-statutory bodies, and also private companies giving actually help. This help are actually funded by the government in terms of energy, water, income related benefits given by the UK government. And I've also proposed that, or also actually illustrated that whatever happens in the UK happens around the world. In the developed world, in the Western world, in the Middle East, and also in Africa, and maybe South America as well. It's actually places like Israel and Saudi Arabia and all the rest of it. The world is global. I spoke about globalization. Globalization is so interesting when you also speak on the element of harmonization. Because what happens in one country happens in another. The context of rule with the global system is actually denationalization. Something dealing with the concept of sovereignty as a political concept, or also as a legal concept. And to globalize, you have to get rid of the sovereignty. So Britain, for example, actually Brexiting. Brexiting means Britain left Europe. Or so it did not. Perhaps it did, perhaps it didn't. I've always said Britain leaving Europe is an impossibility. That's why we had Brexit negotiations after the referendum in Britain. The government, found it necessary to negotiate a Brexit agreement with the European Union. This was because it would have been impossible for Britain to just walk away from Europe. And Brexit was a political mismanagement or miscalculation by the conservative right-wing extremists in Britain. It is nothing beyond that. And the people of Britain bought into a lie from the British government, Conservative Party, who wanted to play a political game with themselves and also with the people of Britain. And it was wrong, it is disgusting, it is gross, and wasted a lot of taxpayers' money. And it is cruelty at a time when, with Brexit, a lot of poor people suffered and still do. Brexit is part of the function of creating poverty to people who are already poor. Many of this country, about 80 to 90% of the population who work for a living. I've also given definition for poverty. If you're poor, it means you work for a living. It is a necessity to work for a living. If you think you are rich and you have to work for a living, then think again. You need to go back to school and learn a thing or two about poverty. Because I don't think they teach very well in school the idea of poverty. And you have a brain. You're clever. You have to think. You get information from wherever you get information from. Think about it. You don't just sit there and allow the media or anybody else to tell you what to think. You have a brain. The British people have their brains. Think. Use it to think. If you don't want to think, you're going to remain in trouble. You speak to a lot of people. So many people in this country now considering committing suicide because they are so shocked at the problems, the dire straits. You know, the people of Britain are not supposed to suffer any cost of living because Britain is the sixth richest country in the world, and that means more than what we believe. It means, in practice, if the government was doing the right thing, running this country, poverty is something we see now with the energy poverty, food poverty is actually laughable. It's unbelievable. It's not supposed to happen in Britain. If you hear around the world that there are poor people in Britain, it makes the country a laughing stock. Everyone living in the UK should have access to adequate wealth to stay out of poverty. You don't need to be rich in Britain, but you cannot be allowed to be in poverty. And that is actually an offense committed by the British government, particularly the Conservative Party and also New Labour. in Britain and the Liberal Democrats, as well as the SNP, the Scottish National Party, who rule in Scotland. Politicians do not know what to do about poverty in Britain, in Europe, in America, in the developed world. They're clueless, and that is wrong. They play politics, they operate capitalism more than having the interest to run the country efficiently. And this is a problem to be corrected by what I call the cultural economy. The culture should educate politicians and the people of this country to act responsibly at every level. It doesn't matter if you're poor or rich. And also, there's another mistake we make in this country where people actually think they are rich. Because they access credit, they get benefits from the government. But if you're on benefit, welfare benefit, then you know that the level of benefit being paid is actually very low. If you are working on the minimum wage, you also know that the minimum wage is very low. What the UK government needs to do immediately is actually to increase the minimum wage, the level of the minimum wage, up to £20 an hour. And that increment should also be reflected in those who are receiving benefit in the basic sense of the word. If you receive benefit, the full benefit, you should actually be as well off as somebody who is actually earning £20 an hour, working on a minimum wage. The argument being based on the fact that capitalism actually doesn't produce full employment. Full employment under capitalism, therefore, becomes a form of welfare support. The government should always intervene in the economy to rebuild the economy, to support small and medium businesses in order to provide a good support in terms of employment, especially improving on the problem of low pay and also poor condition of work. Employers accessing work should actually have a full employment right from the day they become employed. This is a policy being advocated by the Labour Party, and I believe, going with the opinion poll, that the Conservative Party is going to win the next election next year. And not that the Labour Party is going to win the next election next year. And when they do, they should undertake to implement their policies on employment, on welfare benefit. Universal credit should be scrapped, and benefit should be made simple. I mean, especially sickness benefit should be more simple. It should be simplified. The mode of accessing sickness benefit, like personal independence payment, or attendant allowance, or disability living allowance. Those are actually elements of sickness payment. They should actually, for the start, their application process actually should be simplified, and also the eligibility criteria should actually be much simplified. The health assessment system should be removed immediately, because of the health assessment system, and because the government has actually fiddled with needs assessment in terms of social welfare provision, benefit, housing, and access to health and welfare. When you are sick, actually getting a carer, for example, the need assessment for housing, if you need social housing, should change immediately to that. Is actually what the government should concentrate on, to actually begin the process of solving the problem of the cost of living. The cost of living relates to housing, and the level of rent on public housing should be fixed. There should be a maximum level of rent, and the service charge system should be removed, because it's a stealth taxation on rent. It is actually what the social housing is trying to increase rent costs uh, indirectly. It's a stealth taxation on rent. So service charge should be scrapped, and there should be a fixed maximum for housing. And I would also say that something else to be prevented is actually what you call there are other charges on housing, things like when we talk about the rent. Actually, we talk about council tax as well. Council tax should be paid fully by the government, especially those on low income shouldn't pay council tax at all on their property, especially the property they are renting from the government. And things like energy should be controlled by the government. The government should actually fix energy costs for people who actually work for a living. Should pay a different rate of energy. The 90% of the British people should only pay the maximum a household should pay in terms of energy, electricity, gas. The maximum per annum, if you like, should be no more than £1,000. If you're on benefit, if you're on low minimum wage, you should pay a maximum of £500 per annum. In theory, the British people should not pay for energy at all if they're on benefit. The British people should not pay for energy at all if they're on minimum wage of any sort. Whether the government increases the level of benefit, whether the government increases the level of the minimum wage, people in work should not actually, people who work at the minimum wage should not pay energy at all. If they do, shouldn't be more than 500. And the same goes with water. Actually, it is very weird that in Britain people pay for water. The same with food. Food prices should be fixed by the government. The supermarket should be supported to fix the price for food. We cannot allow the food prices to go out of control. And the supermarket should be under strict instruction not to waste food produced, especially when the government is giving money to farmers to subsidize farming, and then you have farmers actually throwing back to destroy 50% of the food they are produced. Why do you produce it and throw it away? The government has been lecturing poor people about waste, and they have been arguing they want to cut waste in protecting public taxpayers' money. They're talking nonsense. Given the amount of money they waste paying, supporting farmers, or even allowing farmers to throw food away, and artificially keeping the level of the price of food artificially low high. With technology, with government support, people should pay next to nothing for food and energy. The government is not doing that. The government is giving money to energy company to help people who need help with the cost of energy. The energy company do not give this money, in the sense that if you go to water company, for example, to get help to reduce the cost of your energy, if you go to the energy company, the process of actually accessing this discretionary help, this help are actually discretionary, meaning that they don't have to give you, they have to decide. Why is it discretionary? That should be changed. It should be mandatory. If the government is going to help people actually on the matter of energy and water, any help, whether from the local authority or from the DWP, the Department for Health and Social Care, the Department of Work and Pension, and the private energy companies, and all the other charities now operating, they are all private companies or operating as charity organizations. They're actually getting public money, and instead of giving this public money to those who need it, they are not giving it. They make it so practically, they make it impossible to access it. So the government attitude is such as not to help people in Britain who are actually suffering the cost of living. And this is actually contrasted with people like Jeff Bezos. And that's why I've been trying to talk about Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos is the third richest man on earth. He is worth, I think, 100 over 150 billion US dollar, if not more. And that is the problem, because there are actually about 10 or 15% of the population who are so rich that they waste money. They waste money. They play with money like toys. And yet there are people in the world who need help and they are not helped. In the UK, in Africa, that is social injustice, and the government cannot allow that to happen. It is very wrong. It should never happen at all. People deserve more from the government. We need more government. We need more government help, not less, across the globe. Especially if you go to Africa, I'm not still talking about Africa, I'm talking about the developed world, especially Britain. And I already say to you that whatever I say about Britain is similar to what is happening in the West, in the Western world, and generally in the developed world. So we cannot allow that to happen. And that is why I've been talking about Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos is a multi-billionaire. And the cost of living is a problem to do with actually lack of money, lack of resources. People don't have money. They don't have enough. They're in debt, and they are still being taxed by the government. And going forward, we'll be looking at all these government policies. Leave a comment below if you know anything about government policies in the UK or around the world in your country. Just leave a comment below. What do you think about taxation? Taxing the poor more than taxing the rich. We're going to give proper analysis in what taxation is, because the way people define taxation is sometimes fraudulent. Ordinary people should define taxation. If you buy food, that is a tax because it's a necessity. If you pay for public transport or for transportation, if it is a necessity, it's a taxation. The government should actually pay for that. You shouldn't pay for public transport. You shouldn't pay for food. You shouldn't pay for drink, because if you don't eat food, you're going to die. So what is the government going to do if you cannot afford food? It means you're going to die. So that is a form of taxation, because you're paying for something necessary. Now, we say this because normally the British people should grow their own food, but we live under a system which do not allow us in the developed world to grow our own food. The phenomenon is now going to Africa. Africa being actually removed from the countryside and brought into towns and cities through different mechanisms, especially civil war in Africa. That's why you get concentration camps. People are actually being taken away from the villages and brought into the towns. They're leaving the land empty. So the government now can go and get an excuse for taking a land away from the people of Africa as a continent, using diseases, using war, crime. There is some form of a conspiracy. That's why there is war in Africa. That's why there is a lot of diseases in Africa, because the people of Africa need to be removed from their land and forced into concentration camps in town and cities. It has already happened in Europe. The Europeans no longer have their land. The super rich actually have taken all the lands from Britain, America. Jeff Bezos actually owns a big chunk of land. People like him are the one owning land. And why do they own land? Because they want to control the world. See, the reason they take land away, because so that they can control you. Yesterday, on another video, I actually showed how Jeff Bezos controls his employees. Because capitalism is about rule, and if you want to rule on somebody, you have to control over them. And I've been saying this over and again. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and support the channel, share it with your friend or family and participate in it. Leave a comment, click the notification bell, and so that if you like the channel, let us build this channel together. And I'm going to stop this video here. I've mentioned Jeff Bezos, and I'll say it again. And see you in the next video. Jeff Bezos is a rich person. I will talk about a couple of rich people to show to you the purpose of wealth and the reason it is important to show to you that some people are actually very rich. But more importantly, on the positive outlook, if you want to get rich, try to learn from the people who make money. These are actually their values to you. And try and do your best. Get out of poverty. And if you're working, work as hard as possible. And try to stay out of debt if you can. And save your money if you can for emergency. Because the cost of living is a crisis, actually, an emergency. And don't think that the cost of living is going to stop. And don't think that financial crisis is going to stop. It's going to go there, go on and on and on. So you need to learn how to survive. This is the same thing I've repeated over and over in all the videos. I'm so determined to get the message across. Going to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.